In the name of personal injury law.
Welcome back to In the Name of the Law. Today we're going to talk about motorcycle accidents, and I'm here with Steve Sinas of the Sinas Dramus Law Firm. Now, I understand that a motorcyclist who is involved in an accident has rights that may be different than a regular auto crash. Can you tell us about that, Steve?
Yeah, so I've had the privilege to represent many people who have been unfortunately injured in a motorcycle accident. And most people understand that motorcyclists have different rights than people who are injured in auto accidents. Some of the rights may be similar, but there are certainly differences. So let me first start talking about medical expenses. So what motorcyclists need to understand is that if they're in a crash, the general rule is they don't have a right to turn to auto no-fault insurance to pay their medical expenses. That's the general rule. However, if their crash somehow involved a motor vehicle, meaning that the motor vehicle hit them or somehow caused them to crash, they may be entitled to no-fault benefits. I'm actually litigating a case currently that deals with the issue of whether bright lights on a car could constitute the involvement of a motor vehicle so as to give my client the right to no-fault benefits, and that's actually an uncertain area of the law right now. So there's this test that motorcyclists need to understand that needs to be analyzed, and it can make this huge difference to open the door to have that lifetime coverage that's currently available under the no-fault law. And so it's a big issue that has to be looked at in motorcycle crashes. If you can't show the involvement of a motor vehicle, then you have no right to no-fault benefits. Then you need to turn to private health insurance, or if you're on Medicare or Medicaid, whatever it may be, you're not going to be able to get no-fault insurance to pay for anything, so you're going to have to find another source of coverage.
Are there other no-fault benefits aside from medical benefits that for a motorcyclist who's involved in an accident?
So if it's determined that a motorcyclist's crash involved a motor vehicle, they have a right to no-fault benefits that includes medical, and it also includes 3 years of wage loss, which is 85% of their gross income, and it's up to a monthly cap. Right now it's about $5,600, give or take. It changes every fall. And right now, the wage loss benefit is for 3 years, and so if you're injured in a crash and you have no-fault benefits, you have medical expenses, wage loss, and then there's this household chore benefit, which is part of the no-fault benefits. It's called replacement services, $20 a day for 3 years. Not a big deal, but it helps the motorcyclists with their chores around the house they might not be able to do because of their injuries.
Is there a way that a motorcyclist would be disqualified from having the no-fault benefits?
Yeah, so this is a little hard for people to understand, but you may be found to be entitled to benefits because the crash involved a motor vehicle, but there could be other reasons why you get disqualified. And here are some of those reasons. One, you're driving a motorcycle or operating a motorcycle that has been stolen. So if that's the case, then you could be disqualified. The other way is if you have been listed as an excluded operator on the insurance policy that may cover that motorcycle. But then the one I see the most often is the uninsured motorcyclist disqualification, where if they didn't have liability and property protection insurance on their motorcycle, which they're required to have under the law. In other words, they were uninsured, they didn't meet their insurance obligations under the law. The no-fault law says even if you are entitled to no-fault benefits, you're disqualified because your motorcycle didn't have the required insurance.
So for me, it just seems a little bit of common sense that if you're in a motorcycle accident as a motorcyclist, your injuries are maybe a lot worse than the automobile that's in the accident. Wouldn't all motorcyclists want to have this coverage?
Well, here's the thing to tie it all together. You are entitled to this coverage, this no-fault coverage, only if a motor vehicle is involved. And here's the other weird thing about the way the law works. If a motorcyclist is in a crash that has a motor vehicle involved, the motorcyclist doesn't turn to their own auto insurance. They turn to the insurance policy of the vehicle involved. So say you were driving the motor vehicle and I was on a motorcycle. Whether you caused the crash or not, maybe it was even my fault, but if your car was involved, I turn to your no-fault insurance company and they pay my benefits. And here's the way the new law affects everything I'm saying today. It doesn't really directly affect it, but it has this big impact on the law. People will be able to, as of July 1st, 2020, buy limited no-fault insurance policies. So say you bought a $250,000 no-fault insurance policy, and say I had lifetime no-fault. If I'm on my bike and you are in your motor vehicle, your vehicle's involved, I'm going to have to turn to your no-fault policy, not mine. And if you have $250,000 of coverage, I can't access the lifetime I bought for my auto injuries. And I'm just stuck with your $250,000. So the new law has this effect of making the motorcyclists be at the fate of what insurance choices the vehicle involved the operator of that vehicle involved made when buying insurance.
And
that's kind of unfair.
And what rights does a motorcyclist have to sue an at-fault driver?
Okay, so the way the no-fault law works, you get your medical expenses from no-fault, assuming you can get it. And if that's the case, then you have a claim against the at-fault driver for pain and suffering damages and any wage loss beyond that 3-year period that no-fault covers. So your rights are pretty similar to the person who's just injured in an auto crash. You have to prove the same issues and all that. I will say this, though. That disqualification issue I mentioned on the no-fault side of things, if you are an uninsured motorcycle, you can still pursue pain and suffering damages from the at-fault driver, even though you're disqualified from no-fault. So it's a little confusing, right? You can be disqualified from no-fault, but then still have the right to claim these tort damages for pain and suffering from the at-fault driver. That's just a function of the weird language that's in the statute. So
for a Michigan consumer who's driving an automobile, isn't that an incentive for us to have better insurance policies? Because otherwise, if we somehow are involved with an accident with a motorcycle and they're badly injured, our insurance is there to protect us from that situation too.
Yes, I mean, going forward, especially under the new reforms, everybody should have more liability insurance because they can be sued for more. So I think everybody should understand that that's just the reality they face. And with motorcyclists, the reality is that because of the nature of a motorcycle, if they're in a crash, their body is usually seriously injured because there's not much protecting it. So if you caused a motorcyclist to crash, you could be facing a huge amount of liability, especially once these new laws go into effect on July 1st, 2020.
So it sounds like with the new law especially that motorcycles have a lot to think about regarding what kind of coverage to buy.
They have a lot to think about, but unfortunately the laws also set them up for some unfair results no matter what their choices are. And I don't know what to say about that other than that's just the reality that motorcyclists face. Hopefully the legislature can maybe make it more fair for motorcyclists going forward.
Thank you, Steve, for helping us out here.
Thanks.
In the Name of Personal Injury Law is brought to you by the Sinas Law Firm.